Hi there. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge Wurundjeri country, as that is where this podcast is recorded, and extend this acknowledgement to all First Nations peoples, past, present, and emerging. This podcast takes a holistic approach on community building and knowledge sharing that I hope you can utilise in your life. Let's do this.
Morning light and coffee black. Lesson plans are on the stack. Ready for the students' track. Gonna find our groove.
Alrighty, welcome back everyone. Ooh, as my book is slowly falling down. Oh my god, and my laptop. I've got two laptops. I currently am using the one that I don't usually use to record because I think my other one is slowly dying on me and I'm watching it roll down and hoping that it stays. No, okay. We need to be the adults in the room. Even though I'm on school holidays, I have to be the adult in the room. Okay. When you need help in the classroom, so obviously there's the ESOs, the Education Support Officers that I was speaking about. What I realised were warning signs that I needed help, and I'm going to go through an analogy that helped really put this into perspective for me later. But two things: additional learning needs or accommodations in multiple students, because at least in this class, I'm generalising a lot here, these kids with additional learning needs were in different cliques or different friend groups. So that then creates a thing I call distraction tennis. Not just these kids with additional learning needs, but let's say, for example, let me go back before it looks like I'm putting prejudice on these kids, because I'm not. Now that I know I'm ADHD, I was technically one of those kids. I just wasn't on the formal piece of paper, so not discriminating at all. So let's say you've got one kid with additional learning needs. The rest are quite average to high performing, right? Once you've finished explaining and the kids go off to their activities, you can trust that they're going to start working on their activities, and you can go to that kid with additional learning needs and have a chat to them one-on-one, see if they need any help, see how they're going. Cool. Then they can start. Then you go around and behaviour manage, because in that time, other kids could have gotten bored, and that's normal, right? When you have multiple in different friend groups, you go and talk to one kid. Then you got to go repeat it to the other. And by the time you've repeated that to the other, this side of the room's gotten distracted. So you go over there to behaviour manage, but you haven't spoken to this kid yet. So they've started having a ruckus, and then it goes back and forth. And that's distraction tennis. The ball's over here, you try and catch it, the ball's on the other side of the court. So you go there, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it is exhausting. The other one I called it was distraction orchestra, because it felt like this side with the trumpets and the trombones were all going off, and then the violins and the drums were going off over here, and then all of a sudden there was an opera singer in the middle, and you're like, what the is going on? I didn't even know we were at the opera. So distraction tennis, distraction orchestra, whatever you want to call it, if it starts feeling like that, it's time to reach out. How to ask for help in these situations. Email your learning support team to organise a meeting. So every school has a learning support team. Could be big, could be small, depending on the type of school that you work at. We're quite lucky that we have our own space for the learning support team, so I am able to go and meet with them one-on-one. I have done quite regularly, just if I need some clarification on what certain terms mean for certain kids with additional learning needs. And it's easier sometimes just to talk one-on-one. So I'd email them first. I'd probably also email them with your head of faculty CC'd, or just the person who manages you CC'd, so then they are aware of your struggle points, I suppose. Also in this, not saying that my school was trying to pull a dodgy on me. It was very much just a oversight mistake, especially because I was new to the school. They were too busy trying to get all my sitch in order before they could get my class's sitch in order. So with those emails, it does keep a paper trail. So just in case someone wants to blame the new kid for something, you can say, well, actually, no, I did ask here, right? So paper trail is always nice. If, for example, well, even if they do accommodate to you, the learning support team, but let's say hypothetically they don't, ask experienced staff to observe and give you feedback, okay? So I had this formally happen with the coaching program because I asked for help, especially when the ESOs weren't in my classroom, so I had both. Who says it can't be a colleague that you're getting along quite well with, or a colleague in your meetings where they're like, wow, they've got really good ideas, or, they seem to have good rapport with their kids, or, they've got a really challenging class, but they seem to come out of it fine. If you start having those observations of certain teachers, go and ask if any of your spare periods, or any of your, if you're in primary school, if your kids' specialist times line up so that one of you can observe the other. It doesn't happen enough in Australian schools, I don't think, this whole casual observation and feedback. So yeah, whether it's formal like the coaching program that I was a part of, or just getting your friend to make some feedback notes, yes, it might feel like you're back in university on placement, but let's be honest, is university actually preparing us for placements and jobs as much as I could? Didn't think so. Also, do your research. The fact that you have come here means you're already doing half of the battle, especially because this episode is titled Winter Ask for Help. So you're already doing half of the battle by seeing whether your feelings are valid, which they always are, but it's nice to know from someone else. But yeah, do your research. See what information there is on the education department websites or other relevant organisations on, what an education support officer's job actually is. One thing that I wish I did do in university was work as an ESO, because then I could see both sides and see when I needed these people in my classrooms, instead of just being like, oh, the school will know. No, you know. Now going on to behind the scenes. So when do you need help behind the scenes? When I say behind the scenes, I mean outside of the classroom, because as we know, we don't just teach and walk off. We have lesson planning, we have meetings, we have marking, we have reports, we have this, that, and the rest of it, right? So when do you need help with that? Always. Look at me. If you're watching the video, look at me. Always. And this is me telling myself when I go back and rewatch this, you always need help, and that doesn't make you weak. Cool? Cool. Look, what really got me this year was the whole saying we're all in the same boat. And it's never said with any malicious intent. But what I couldn't get through my mind, and everyone did tell me I was stupid for thinking this, but you might find yourself going down a similar thought pattern. Yes, I am the first year teacher. And, people have said again and again that they don't expect me to know everything in my first year. But on paper, I'm a secondary school teacher, just like the teacher that's been working 10 years. We have the same job description. So on paper, I should be able to do what they do. And so then that puts me into the thing of I'm not good enough, imposter syndrome, blah, all of that blah that goes to your brain and makes you believe that you're not good enough. So with the saying we're all in the same boat, yes, and it can cause gaslighting thoughts, but it doesn't apply to teachers in their first 5 years. I am so sorry. Not to say that your problems are bigger or worse than others, but people have a lot of sympathy for you. Even if they're not showing it all the time. That means that they're willing to help if they have the capacity to, right? There's a couple of analogies that I want to use here, and one of them is the alarm bell analogy. Now, people might have heard this one, I don't know, but I heard it from one of my now really good friends. She's the head of science at our school. I had a lot to do with her in my final placement before I got this job, so we've just been able to grow that friendship now. This came along when I had a lot of kids confiding in me with welfare and just mental health issues and things like that. And I felt like I was never doing the right thing. And so I burst into tears and I was like, I don't want to let these kids down. This is a really serious situation. And I feel like I'm going to feel like I've done the right thing, and then something really bad's going to happen and it's going to reflect badly on me, even though I knew no better. And she used this alarm bell analogy. And she said, going into teaching, first year, it's like someone's locked you in a room with a bunch of smoke alarms, alarm bells, sirens, you name it. And your job is to work out how to turn them off. How the do you do that, right? You'll try and smash them. You'll try and ignore them. You'll try and flick some switches if there's any there, but they seem dead, right? Everything feels like an alarm bell. Everything feels like it needs to be attended to right then and there. It feels so loud and it's at the forefront of your mind. Then you get a couple of years into teaching and you realize what can wait and what can't. You start to work out how to prioritize yourself. And then all of a sudden, it doesn't matter how many alarm bells are going off. You know which one's the real one. You know which one is the one you should listen to and act on because it sounds different. And when I heard that, it just brought so much relief, so much acceptance, so much compassion for myself. Because how the am I meant to know which alarm bells are good and which ones, I can wait with and which ones I have to act on? How am I meant to know that? So that really helped. Another one is when this imposter syndrome kicks in. A couple of people might have heard it, but I call it the Neil story. So Neil Gaiman, who is the author of Coraline, one of his most famous works, he gets invited to this really fancy dinner party, and he's like, I'm just an author, but okay, sure, like, I guess. He goes to this fancy dinner party. There's, champagne and hors d'oeuvres and people in fancy clothes and the mansion beyond compare. Anyway, he feels so awkward. He's like, surely this invitation was meant for someone else. This is insane. Like, I'm an author, for God's sake. Like, clearly they don't realize how much money we don't make. So anyway, he finds the bar, which is like really close to the entrance. So he parks himself in a little corner there. And he ends up talking to this guy. And they start hitting it off quite well because they're like, oh my God, is this the fanciest thing you've been to? Yeah, is this the fanciest thing you've been to? Oh my God, who would have thought we'd be here, right? They start having a chat. And they find out, Neil Gaiman found out that the other guy's name was Neil as well. And they're like, oh my God, no way. As if both of us, don't feel like we belong here. And we're both named Neil. And he's like, if you don't mind me asking, what's your surname? So then, if anyone asks, I can split us apart. And the other Neil said, oh, Armstrong. The guy who went to the moon, right? And Neil Gaiman's like, oh, Neil Armstrong, what are you talking about? You're not meant to be here. Like, you've landed on the moon. He goes, nah, I don't know, man. Like, these guys have done really successful things with themselves. And, that one over there, he's owned his own business. And that one... So you're telling me that the man could walk on the moon and still feel the same as the author? It goes to show that imposter syndrome isn't real. It doesn't matter how high you achieve, you'll still feel like you don't belong there. And that's called self-awareness, I suppose. What I'm trying to say is that imposter syndrome is fake because you could have landed on the moon and you'll still feel the same as you do now. So when those alarm bells are constantly going off, when you feel like an imposter, when you feel like everyone seems to be doing fine but me, that's when you ask for help. That's when you stop hiding. And that's what I wish I did, because I really hid in my shell when I started feeling like that. And it actually got me into more dirt than I could have. And I look back and I'm like, damn, Zoe, if you just swallowed your pride, maybe we would be okay. Maybe we wouldn't be dealing with burnout these holidays. Am I right? So that's where we're at. Okay? So if you're a little bit like me and too much of an empath for your own good, or, you don't like to cause confrontation, I've noted down a couple of ways that I've learnt how to ask for help or to delegate that aren't as confrontational. All right. So the first one, if you're directly asking someone for help, frame it as advice, not delegation. So an example is, how do you do blank so quickly? Or how have you mastered blank? Right? They give you some tips and advice. We go from there. Then that could also open up a gateway of, do you mind showing me how you do this? And then maybe, for example, it's, do you mind showing me how you would mark this essay? And you give them one of yours. Bang, they've helped you mark one of your essays. Delegated, made life easier, and they're happy because they've helped you, because you sort out their advice. Oh my God, it's time for bed. But yeah, that's a nice way to sort of gateway into it. Number 2, teamwork makes the dream work. So equity over equality. So this is where what I was saying about our job descriptions on paper look the same. That's equality. We're looking for equity. All right. I can only get up to the point that the 10-year teacher can with the help that they got at my point. All right. So for example, if you're in a team of 5 teachers and you happen to have the largest class and you're the new kid on the block, you could always ask and, see if each teacher could mark one of your papers each. And if there's 4 other teachers, that's 4 papers you don't have to mark. And at the end of the day, it is 1 added to theirs when it actually brings it to equity, if that makes sense. Equality would be you all mark your own papers. Cool. Equity is we'll all mark our papers, but we'll help out the new kids so then they can deal with the workload. Using calendars, especially digital. So I'm more of a digital girl because it will pop the reminder up in my face. So if I'm going to forget a meeting, I have no excuse, right? I did this too little too late, but I have set up my calendars for next year to help me get through that. So then that delegates what is going on in your short-term memory. What do I have next? What do I have to get? You don't have to worry about it anymore, girlfriend. Just look on your calendar. You're good, right? And then look, if you're really, really concerned about how the workload or how the staff members are treating you at work, contacting WorkSafe or your union representative at your work to confirm that you're being treated well is never a waste of time. In saying all this, the worst that someone can say is no. And it's as simple as that. If they don't have, if you ask for help doing something and it's not in someone's capacity, they're well in their right to say no. But just because one person says no doesn't mean that there isn't someone else or some other way else that you can be helped. Okay? So I guess this might even just be a message for me, because rejection sensitivity is huge for me. So if I get told no, even if it's in the nicest way possible, the message is still no, I can't help you, and it can really bring me down. Let this be a reminder that, like imposter syndrome, like the Neil story, it's never as bad as what your brain's making it out to be. Try again when you feel up to it. And I promise you, you'll be okay. Ask for help. It doesn't make you weak. It makes the job get done. And at the end of the day, that's your goal. Hopefully this episode has helped you, clear your mind or validate your feelings, or, just give you some other tips and tricks on what you can do to navigate this crazy world of teaching, and make you feel a little bit less alone. We're never alone in the teaching journey, but God, it is so easy to think so. So easy. You're in a class filled with children all day. You are really the only adult half the time. No wonder you feel alone, but please know that you aren't. And one way to know that is with this podcast here. I am always here for you. I am always here to help out my community and, help you make your lifelong stories. Yeah, that's it. If you're not already following the podcast, please do so. We are on Spotify, YouTube, and now we're on Apple Podcasts. Yes! Live, laugh, loving. We are expanding. Feel free to leave a 5-star review. Follow the podcast. Also on Instagram, Stranger in the Staff Room is our @ and we will see you. I say we, like it's not just me on this couch. I will see you next time. Stranger in the Staff Room, over and out.
Teaching vibes were in the air, sharing knowledge everywhere, guiding young minds with such care. This is what we do.